Public EV charging is quietly hitting a weird milestone. Fewer people are having failed charging sessions than at any time in the last 4 years. And yet, overall satisfaction with public charging is going down. So what's going on? How can the hardware be getting more reliable, but the drivers using it feel worse about the experience? In this video, we are going to break down the latest US electric vehicle experience public charging study from JD Power and translate it into a real-world language. By the end, you'll know where charging is actually improving, why people are still annoyed, and what this tells you about the next few years of living with an EV. The study that everyone quotes but almost nobody reads. Let's start with what this study actually is. Every year, JD Power surveys thousands of EVs and plug-in hybrid owners across the United States and asks them one big question in a lot of different ways. How happy are you with public charging? Not just the plug and the screen, but the whole thing. Finding the charger, starting the session, paying, the speed, how safe the location feels, whether the station is broken, whether there is something to do while you wait, things like this. They roll that into satisfaction scores out of 1,000 points for two types of charging. Level 2 public charging, which is the slower AC stuff you see at parking, garages, workplaces, shopping centers, and DC fast charging, the high-power chargers you use on road trips or when you just don't have time to wait. In the 2025 study, more than 7,400 drivers responded. That's enough to see patterns, not just random noise. Now here's the twist. Reliability is clearly moving in the right direction, but satisfaction scores are not. There's the good news. There are fewer charging failures reported. Let's talk about the bright spots first, because it's the big one. JD Power tracks something they call non-charging visits. That's when a driver shows up to a charger, plugs in, or tries to start a session, and leaves without successfully charging. In 2025, only 14% of EV owners said they had a visit like that. 14% is still not great, but it is the lowest level in 4 years. A year earlier, that number was roughly 5% points higher. That means the trend line is clear. Fewer totally failed charging attempts. More sessions that actually start, run, and complete. And remember, these are not just Tesla drivers on superchargers. This is the full mix of networks and vehicles. So from a pure reliability point of view, the industry is not collapsing. In fact, it's quietly getting its act together. Broken hardware is being fixed faster, networks are watching uptime more closely, automakers are paying attention because their customers are screaming about bad charging more than anything else. That's the good news. Now here's the part that makes everyone scratch their head. The bad news is that people are less satisfied anyways. Even as failed sessions drop, satisfaction scores fell in both major categories. For DC fast charging, the average satisfaction score is 654 out of 1,000. That's down 10 points from the year before. For level 2 public charging, the average is 607, down 7 points. In a world where fewer people are getting totally blocked from charging, why are they reporting less satisfaction? The short version, money and expectation. Let's unpack both. Cost. When bill ruins the charge. One of the sharpest drops in the entire study is satisfaction with the cost of charging. JD Power breaks out individual dimensions like ease of payment, speed, convenience, and cost. Cost took a big hit in 2025. For level 2 users, satisfaction with the cost of charging drops to 459. For DC fast charging users, cost satisfaction landed even lower at 430. Both of those are 16 points drops in a single year. In other words, people are not just mildly annoyed. They're clearly feeling that public charging has gotten more expensive and it's dragging down their whole view of experience. Why is that happening? Think about the last few years. Early on, a lot of DC fast charging networks priced aggressively low to attract users and build a footprint. On top of that, many automakers threw in free charging packages with new EVs. 12 months of free DC fast charging sounds great when you're launching a new model. It also wraps people's sense of what charging should cost. Fast forward to now, electricity rates have gone up in many areas. The easy funding and incentives are not as generous. Networks that use low prices and marketing tools are raising them to something closer to sustainable. Those free charging promos are ending. So drivers who got used to cheap, free public charging are now seeing real bills. On top of that, non-Tesla owners are increasingly using Tesla's supercharger network through adapters and new access programs. The study notes that non-Tesla owners using superchargers report lower satisfaction with cost compared to Tesla owners, even though they've been using the same hardware. You can probably guess why. If you bought a Tesla, you know you were going into that ecosystem. You might accept the cost as part of the deal because you're getting seamless reliability. If you're in a different brand and finally get access to the good network, then see high per kilowatt hour prices and idle fees, it's much easier to feel like you're being squeezed. So reliability is up, but the bill is up too. And the bill is what people remember when they check their bank app later. The second big thing that explains the satisfaction drop is expectations. The study splits drivers into two groups: first-time EV owners and veteran EV owners, people who have been around the block a bit more. Across both Level 2 and DC fast charging, first-time owners are more satisfied than veterans. For Level 2, first-timers score around 610, while veterans land lower, around 592. The gap is smaller on DC fast charging, but it is still there. So why would that happen? If you have just come from a gas car, your baseline is driving to a gas station, maybe waiting behind one or two cars, filling in 5 minutes, tapping your car, leaving. The first time you use a decent fast charger and it works, the experience feels futuristic, even if it's not perfect. But if you have been using public charging for years, you have lived through the broken screens, the call this number messages, the random errors, and the out-of-service stations on the road trip. You have watched the network mature, you have seen the tweet storms and the app updates. So now your expectations are higher. You want better reliability, faster speeds, clearer pricing, easy payments, safer locations, and actual things to do while you wait. When those don't improve fast enough, your satisfaction drops, even if the raw reliability numbers technically get better. Veteran owners are judging the current system not against gas cars, but against what it should be by now. And by the standard, a lot of public charging still feels half-baked. Who's actually doing well? Now let's talk about specific networks, because the rankings are always where people lean in. On the DC fast charging side, Tesla's supercharger network still ranks highest, with a satisfaction score of 709. That is actually 22 points lower than the previous year, but still enough to hold the top spot. Right behind Tesla are some newer automaker-run networks: Mercedes-Benz's charging network, Rivian's Adventure network, and Ford's DC fast infrastructure all collectively hit the same 709 mark in satisfaction. They weren't ranked officially in the chart yet because their footprint is still small, but the early signs are clear. When the automaker controls the vehicle, the app, and the charging experience together, things tend to work better because they can do what Tesla did: own the ecosystem from plug to screen. Third-party DC fast charging networks that serve everyone, regardless of brand, average a score of 591. That gap between 700 plus and under 600 tells you how hard it is to build a universal network that has to work for a dozen different car companies and charging standards. On the level 2 side, Tesla Destination Charger takes the top spot with a score of 661. ChargePoint comes in second at the 628. The segment average across all level 2 charging networks is 607. So from a pure how happy are people standpoints, the patterns is simple. Vertically integrated or tightly controlled ecosystems do better. Universal networks that have to plug into everything struggle more, especially the ease of use and reliability. Location, geography, and the chargers always broken. Another layer in the study that doesn't get enough attention is regional variations. The Pacific region has the highest rate of non-charge visits at 21%, and 12% of drivers there say they had to wait for an available charger. So places like California and West Coast, which have more EVs and more chargers, also have more crowding and more frustrations. In contrast, the East South Central region has the lowest rate of non-charge visits at 7%, and only 5% of drivers report wait times. Fewer chargers overall, but also fewer EVs fighting for them. Zoom in on cities and it gets even more interesting. In Seattle, 25% of drivers report unsuccessful charging attempts. Los Angeles is just behind at 24%. San Francisco has a lower failure charging rate, but a higher share of drivers reporting waits to access chargers. Denver also shows noticeable wait times. So you end up with a split reality. In some regions, the problem is this charger is broken or not working right. In others, the problem is this charger works, but there are too many people already using it. Across all those failed charging attempts nationwide, the single most common reason is the same. The charger was out of service or not working properly. That's 60% of failed charge visits. So reliability has improved overall, but in specific hotspots, the pain is still very real. If you live in one of those areas and have a few awful experiences in a row, that's enough to tank your satisfaction score even if the national trend line is moving in the right direction. Faster is not the magic fix. It's attempting to say, just make faster chargers and problem goes away. The data says that is not enough. JD Power Analysis explicitly calls this out. Yes, expanding DC fast charging is important. Yes, high power levels help shorten sessions, but speed alone doesn't solve the core complaints. If the charger is broken, it doesn't matter if it's rated for 350 kilowatts. If the pricing is confusing or feeling predatory, people will be annoyed even if the session is short. If the location feels unsafe, poorly lit, or has nothing to do while waiting, people remember the discomfort more than peak kilowatts. If payment fails or the app is clunky, the whole thing feels worse, even when the electrons eventually flow. The takeaway is simple. EV charging pain is multi-dimensional reliability, cost, speed, usability, safety, and convenience all matter. Speed is just one knob on a very crowded control panel. So what does all of this adds up to? If you're someone who either owns an EV now or is thinking about buying one, first, the horror story narrative that public charging is getting worse is not completely true. One failed session things are slowly getting better. Fewer total disasters are there. Second, the frustration you hear from drivers about cost and experience is real. Charging is getting more expensive in many places, and expectations are rising faster than the system is improving. Third, the best experiences are still happening where the car makers or the brand controls more of the experience. And the biggest gap in the satisfaction is still between integrated ecosystems and generic networks. Fourth, where you live matters. Your perception of EV charging will be heavily shaped by your region, your local networks, and how crowded your area is. From the outside, it's easy to lump all this into EV charging is good or EV charging is bad. The truth is much messier. The infrastructure is growing up. It's getting more reliable, and at the same time, the honeymoon period of cheap or free charging is ending. Drivers are turning from early adapters into normal customers, and normal customers are much less forgiving. That pressure long-term is a good thing, because it forces networks and automakers to stop chasing only speed and start fixing the whole experience. So next time you see a satisfaction chart or a tweet storm about the broken charger, remember the larger story behind it. Public charging in the US is in that awkward teenage phase. Strong progress on reliability, declining happiness because money, expectations, and experience designs are catching up with reality. If you want to see how this ties into fast charging behavior, battery health, and why your BMS might limit power at the worst possible moment, click on the BMS course links in the description. Thank you.